Hey, Brian. Been working on this over the weekend, and I've got this down to almost 6,000 square feet. I mean, I'm within 200 feet. Um, all the rooms still remain. The only thing I got rid of is the gym upstairs. And figured, if you've got the storage container thing going right now, or you could use a bay, like you said, that would probably be the one thing that we could sacrifice. I did real quick look at your old house because you'd mentioned you've gotten everything in the old house, uh, and it was 6,000 square feet. You're right, it was 6,000 square feet. The biggest difference between the two is this great room and kitchen. There's a lot of room in there that you didn't have in your other house. Um, so I've tried to leave this alone, but if you wanted to get more out of here, if you got rid of one of these islands and you did this, I can get rid of another 200 feet, maybe a little under 200 feet, I think. Um, I don't know if you want to do that or not. I personally don't see the utility in two giant islands, but maybe you have plans for those, or anyway. Um, that's why if we're going to affect any of this, that's the one thing that I would do. I would make the kitchen smaller by getting rid of one of the islands. Probably get rid of this and pull everything up. Um, but I've kept everything. Office, I got rid of the radiused walls. I shrank this bedroom by 1 foot, pulled this in 1 foot. Closets are still big, 10 by 8, a little over 10 by 8. I made the laundry room smaller, made the bedroom smaller. I added the second or fourth or fifth bath, whatever that is. But you can see I added it here, made a nice big linen area in the middle here that makes that hall feel bigger. Shrank this a little bit, not a whole lot. Shrank the guest room by 1 foot is all. Made the closet 1 foot smaller. Shrunk the garage just a hair, and everything else is pretty much the same. I shrunk the master bath. It had a lot of room in here. 8 foot 10 is still a lot of room in between all this stuff. But it fits it pretty nice. And when I squared those off, I shrunk that a little. So, and then upstairs, got rid of the gym, but everything else is the same size. Still a good sized bar. Still fits the pool table well. Didn't change any of this. Put in a different window in here. Um, Nice deck coming out here, and you'll see I kind of mimicked what the other architect was doing with the deck area. Um, what does this look like? Worked on that. Tried to give you something more along the lines of what the other guy had done. And, oops, I'm in the hillside now here. It's a nice look. I kept your idea for the entry there. I've got the beam sticking out of there that's kind of softens that look, but they don't have to stick out of there. It's not going to look exactly like the other one. And if I put all kinds of glass in here, first of all, it's a bathroom. You don't need a bunch of glass in it. I put a bunch of glass in here, a lot of glass in here. But what glass does is it wipes out any kind of shear areas that we need. So these will probably be panels, but those are high walls. So the higher the wall, the less the panel is effective. So probably a panel on either side. Those panels, they run about $1,200 a whack, something like that. Plus you've got to put in big footings to make them work. So I'm also trying to keep in mind the cost of construction while I'm doing this. So I put in lots of glass here, lots of glass here. There's a few things I want to show you that, other recommendations that I'd make. But um, I'm showing all these downspouts for a reason. This is the least expensive way of dealing with flat roofs to get them to drain. The most expensive way is roof drains, and roof drains eventually leak. They always leak. So I could put these inside the walls and get rid of them, and you just have a scupper sticking out here because you need an overflow, and we use a scupper for that. And I could put these in the wall, and they come down the wall and they pop out at the bottom, and then you tie them into a drain system that goes into your BMPs. But where that pops out is trouble. It's a leak, potential leak area. These things get clogged up all the time, and they're inside the wall, and they can be trouble to clean out. And you typically don't know that you're having trouble with them until the overflow's taken over, and that can cause some problems too. Least expensive way to do it is these they call them containment heads, I think, something like that, or condenser head. Anyway, this is the least expensive way of doing it, and I've kind of got them exaggerated on their color just to show them off. If they're a problem, we have a solution, but this is the best and least expensive way of doing it. And you can show those off and use copper. And pitched roof. I've got a couple pitched roofs in here. I pitched just trying to break up the entry a little bit, giving a little different feel. Flat roofs. We've got a lot of flat roofs, and there's a problem with flat roofs in California, is that we have to vent them, and we also have to maintain fire rating. And they, between the fire department and the building department, they have pretty much taken away a lot of the options to vent a flat roof that's conventionally framed. And by that I mean, I got a little illustration here. The way we used to do this, and these are big spans. This is the second floor. I think I showed you that. Yeah, I did. We've got this span here. This is a big span, and to get members to span that far, it's going to take at least a TGI joist, maybe a 14-inch, probably 1 foot on center, and it's still going to be like a trampoline in the middle of that. And what we'd have to do is probably frame this wall high and this one low and get it all to drain in one direction. Then you're dealing with all that water in a couple of spots, draining it off. These drains have to be big enough to handle the volume there. And that's what we used to do on all of this roof area. We'd be doing that. You can't do it anymore. The reason being is you use these TJIs, or standard dimensional lumber, and you've got drywall on the bottom of it, you've got sheeting on top and roofing on top, and you've created this sealed cell. All along here you'd have joists in here probably 1 foot on center, trying to span that, and you've got, I don't know, 40 probably bays there, something like that, 30, 40 bays. Each bay has to be vented, because what they have found out in this scenario, you have cold air here and hot air here. This is a cross section of that. So drywall roof on top, there's your joist, there's your insulation. Or the opposite, you've got cold air here and hot air here. You get condensation in these cells, and it causes rot, gets mold, and then it starts to rot. And I've seen it rot through bearing beams all the way through, where you could just reach in with your hand and crumble it. And so the only way to vent that is a vent every single bay. And the problem is, one vent's not going to do it. You got to have a vent on each end. Otherwise, it's like a bottle. You just, the air doesn't get in there and circulate. Well, that would be a nightmare on here. All those vents in there, it'd be just a joke trying to waterproof them all. And Um, the other solution is to fill these bays with insulation. And the only insulation that they're going to allow to do that is a foam insulation that is sprayed in. And it's an impervious. There's two types. There's a pervious and an impervious. The impervious, tighter cellular construction, and it's water resistant, it's heavier, and so you're adding weight to that whole roof system. And if you've got wiring here, if you've got can lights in here, all that stuff, you've got that foam that's just locking it all in there. And if you ever need to get in there, service, change things out, you pull the drywall off here, you've got this massive stuff that you got to dig out, and it's just, if you've got to do anything in there, it's a nightmare. I do use this in a few places. I would use this in the deck. The deck's not going to have enough room. We've got 10-foot walls down below and 10-foot walls up above. I want to maintain a 10-foot ceiling in the kitchen area. That's where this deck is, right over the kitchen. And then over that second island is where the roof pops up to 20 feet. This is 20-foot roof in this area. This has to be vented also. We've got these joists running through here, and I have to vent those for the same reason. Well, I would use that cellular material in this deck to make it work. I think that's probably the best answer for this area, and I've done that in a couple of situations. But so what do we do about these other areas? I would suggest using a roof truss, and it's a flat roof truss. They say it's flat, but you can add a little pitch to them. When you pitch these, it has to be at least 1/4 inch per foot fall. Even on a flat roof system, you got to drain them. So they consider 1/4 inch per foot a flat roof. With a flat truss, you get, instead of a sealed cell, you've got this webbing in between the top cord and the bottom cord. This is top cord, bottom cord. And you fill these things up with insulation, and you still have this open area that's not sealed off that you can't put ducting in. You can't get any ducting in this type of ceiling. You're always creating drops. You're trying to create raceways and stuff to make these work. So underneath here, you're creating an area. That's the wrong. Let me get rid of that real quick. You're creating an area to run ducting, you know. With this scenario, you've got room to run ducting and wiring and pipes, and you can access those if you have to. You pull the drywall off and you can reach up in there, and actually in some of these they're deep enough, maybe 30 inches deep. You can actually get up and crawl around in there if you had to. But this, we don't require near as many vents because it's all open, creating this big open area. Fire departments sometimes will have us wall these off and create, like they would take half of this and say, okay, we want to seal off half of this and make it this side, you know, there's a fireproof barrier out of one of those trusses. That way if a fire's in here, it can't spread. But typically, if there's enough area in here, which there probably would be in this scenario, they don't do that. But in either case, you're only required, you know, a couple of vents here, a couple of vents here, a couple, and you're done. And these vents are fireproof and blah blah blah. But the other nice thing about this is you can pitch these in the center. You can see this is got 1/4 inch per foot pitch to it. And so you create a ridge line, and in this scenario you've got a ridge going down the middle of this. Now you're draining half the roof this way and half the roof that way. Much easier to deal with. The the rainwater. You can do the same thing up in here. Pitch this and create a ridge down the middle of it. Now we're running water two directions instead of one. And you do that all the way through this first floor and second floor roofs. And it gives you options of how to drain that out. So I'm recommending that. I didn't see that in his plans. It looked like he was trying to do it the old way. And California, you can't make that work anymore. And for good reason, actually. I bucked all that for a while, but I've done a couple of these flat roof homes. It's so much better if you use a truss. What else, Brian? What else here? I think that we're pretty close on the look. Oh, shear. But if we stick a whole bunch of glass in here, like he's got this upper, if we were doing what he was doing, this whole thing would be glass. Well, what happens is this is a big hole in your shear, even though, you know, we're talking about this area being a big hole in the shear. Well, now none of this wall is usable if we went with a big giant piece of glass up there. The same thing with this stairway. We've got a nice big piece of glass in there, but there's no shear value left in that stairwell. There is going this way, nothing here. So it becomes a challenge. How are we going to hold all this stuff up? We don't want to get too carried away with it because it's going to get into some exotic methods of making the shear work. This is something I talked to my engineer about, and he gave me a constructive criticism, said to do this. And here, I'll just do this real quick. And this is obviously not well, you can see I don't even have those same heights. And this would move over here, and this would move over here. It's arguing with me a little. There we go. Reason being is this is a big open building at the bottom, and this is a great big shear wall. And that works great for up here, but what's holding this, tying it down to the foundation? This is where your other architect got in trouble. He did this and he cantilevered it. And so it just becomes a mess. How do you transfer this shear down to the slab? These walls are just like big rubber bands in there. So in an earthquake, this whole thing's shaking. There's nothing that ties this down to the slab below. So he suggested doing this. Just put a wall in between the doors on this side. You put storage over in here, storage cabinets or something, and then maybe a workbench over here, and that becomes less and less obtrusive. But as long as this wall is half the width of the height of these, so these are 10-foot walls, you need a 5-foot wall down here, he said I can make that work. And that would take care of this upstairs pretty handily. So, but he said you move your windows over. Of course, we tuned that up, but move your windows over, change this a little bit, and you can make that work. We could put another window in here if we wanted. That's that bathroom. Put some high windows in there maybe. And then some type of trellis out here. I'm just working on the structure right now, but okay, if this is close, Brian, maybe we ought to get together on a Zoom meeting and go over all of this. see what you like, what you don't like, what we can do about it. I think it's getting there. Let me know what you think. I will send you over the 2Ds floor plans. I've got to get some measurements on here, tune this up a little bit. These, like I said, I'm just trying to get this over to you without spending too much time on it. Hours are starting to add up, so let me know what you think. All right. Hopefully my microphone didn't die in the middle of this. That would be a drag.